On this episode of the Camp Owners Podcast, we have the woman, the myth, the legend, who we have learned so much from in the past 2 years regarding camp health and COVID, all the things that we needed to know. Our superhero, Tracy Gaslin. She is now the executive director of the Alliance of Camp Health. They've rebranded, which is very exciting. And we talk about all things health for camp. We talk about mesh. We talk about looking at well-being versus just health. We talk about your staffing, your health services staff, how camp directors can really be a part of that puzzle and that important role. So if you are interested in really thinking about what that will look like for your summer and being proactive and getting some great advice from Tracy, take a listen. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We're going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired in them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Hi, everyone. I'm Howie Grossinger, the co-owner of Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in the suburbs of Toronto, and co-owner of Camp Walden, an overnight camp in northern Ontario.
Hello, everyone. I am Kelly Shuna, executive director and co-owner of Hidden Pines Ranch Day Camp, located in Stillwater, Minnesota. If you are looking to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/ownerspod or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this, and my favorite line ever, Howie, if you think it's the best podcast ever, you think it'd be useful to others, please spread the word and encourage them to listen and find us on their favorite podcast app. And also just say, hey, take a listen.
Absolutely. Please spread the word. Hi, Kelly. We're back. Another episode, and we've got a really good one today for sure. But before we get to our guest, we've got to do some business. Kelly, we couldn't do this show without some great sponsors, and we're happy to share with you our first of two sponsors that we're very grateful for, and that is Camptivities. We all know in the camp industry, scheduling daily activities, whether you're a small camp, mid-sized camp, or large camp, can be a challenge. You've probably searched the internet for all kinds of solutions, and we recommend that you seek out Camptivities. Whether it's group scheduling, camper scheduling, batch scheduling, you name it, Camptivities is the solution for you. My camp is very familiar with Camptivities. We really appreciate all that it offers and encourage you to check it out. Let Camptivities help you get away from your desk and back into camp. The team at Camptivities would love to show you the next big thing in camp. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat.
Perfect, Howie. So, Howie, I hope you're feeling healthy today because our topic is all about health and camp, and we have an expert extraordinaire, which I'm really excited about. Our topic today is about keeping our camps healthy, and it has never been more important. And we are so excited to have Tracy Gaslin here to discuss what we should all be thinking about as we plan for the summer. From COVID in 2022 to health center staffing, we're really looking forward to touching on those hot topics that camp owners should be and are probably thinking about at this time as they work towards maintaining a healthy camp for the summer. I have to say, Tracy, I'm not missing seeing you as much as I was in 2021, but I am also, you're lovely, but I'm kind of not missing that. But I am also, though, so excited to meet you in person after seeing you so much on webinars and with a cape on at the National Camp Conference here in the United States. But before we get to hearing more from you, Howie and I would love for you to just share with us your camp story. How did you get connected with camp and your little background?
Well, thanks, Kelly and Howie. It's always fun to connect with camp friends, right? That's what we're best at as camp people. And I've been involved in camp probably longer than both of you have been alive, but it's pushing the envelope there. So I went into camp in 1996, and I was been a special needs camp person for years and done every type of special needs program out there and have loved it. And I just remember the first year I went to camp, I said, wow, this is a pretty influential kind of experience. Like this can really have a real impact on people. And that was my first year at camp. I went as a volunteer, as many people do, going to camp the first time, and I haven't missed a year since. It's just been pretty amazing that when you get into the camp experience, how really you begin to understand the value added opportunities that it provides not only to youth, but to young adults, to adolescents, to our staff as well. And so it's such a great and powerful experience that I am such a hardcore advocate that everybody should have some form of camp experience.
Absolutely, and it's and the camp experience, as we know, can take place in so many different forms, and your contribution to camp can be in so many different ways. And for the many episodes that Kelly and I have been honored to do, we've really felt the timing now to talk, a focused discussion on health at camp.
Mhm.
And while COVID and the journey of all of us in the industry through COVID has still is prevalent, it does bring up for us this real mindfulness of overall health at camp in ways that I don't think any chapter in the industry has ever brought us before. And I think before we get into the discussion and get some of your insight into what camp owners should be thinking about, I thought maybe you would give us this sort of setting of the stage of the Association of Camp Nursing, and I know the new exciting chapter that is before you in the world of camp nursing. Many camp owners have, we live in this bubble where we get our first aiders, our camp nurses, our doctors, but many of us are probably unfamiliar that there is this great organization that has, I guess, championed all of the many issues that allow us to be healthy at camp. So with that,
Yeah.
Tracy, maybe you could give us some background on this wonderful group of professionals.
Well, it is, today is an especially special day, I would say, for us at ACM, because today we actually launched our new organization, and the Association of Camp Nursing is now the Alliance for Camp Health. And your point that you're making about health is just ever present in our mind. And it's what we do day in and day out, because we know that in essence, for people to be healthy, we are really taking this broader focus around well-being. That it's not just, when I say health, we often think physical. And so really, we all know that the word mesh is the word we use: mental, emotional, and social health. That mesh is such an integral part of us being well or healthy, that we have spent a significant amount of time, especially in the past 2 years with our COVID research and our COVID data collection. We were looking at COVID, but guess what we were getting? We were getting mesh feedback. We were getting feedback about the challenges with staff this past year, especially the challenges of people learning how to navigate just social interaction. It was just quite amazing. And yes, we've known about it. It's kind of played a part in our little brains. We've been talking about the psychosocial piece of health and the importance of that. But you're right, Howie, it's really not come into play and kind of smacked us in the face, if you will, until the last couple of years, where people have been so segregated and alone, and all the words of isolation and fearfulness and things, that they just did not have a support group or connectedness to people. And so it really has reaffirmed that we as human beings are built for connectedness, and youth and young adults almost is more important sometimes, and sometimes even the kids. The kids do really well and seem to be quite resilient and are really engaging and come full circle pretty quickly. I say kids are pretty pliable, right? I think about them being the easy plastic piece. And when they're having difficulties, they can bend and swerve and do quite well. But when we got to our staff and our young adults, they really struggled. They really didn't know how to do emotional regulation. They didn't know how to kind of persevere when things were tough. So there's been so much of that happening. And so the Alliance for Camp Health launch today is really a beautiful piece to say, we know that camp directors are the people who own, operate, and run their health services. So who needs to know about camp health services? Camp directors, camp leaders. And, we always say, as a camp director, what do you know about your camp health services? How are you connected to those people actually providing the service, right? It's kind of like being connected to your counselors. You also need to be connected to your health services that you're overseeing and trying to help grow and prosper and encourage and support. And people say, but Tracy, I'm not a nurse. You don't have to be a nurse to be the manager of your health services. You just have to have a willingness to learn about that area of your work and really work together to create this really robust plan around psychosocial and emotional and social care, because in essence, that's what all of our mission statements say, right? Our mission statements don't say the goal of our camp is for a kid to climb to the top of a climbing wall. No, nobody's mission statement says that. Everybody's mission statement says connect kids to one another, connect kids to nature, developmental goals, all kinds of different things. And those tools we have at camp are beautiful and great to have. The climbing wall and the high ropes and the swimming and those are tools we use to get at our mission. And I think you're right, Howie. I think, all this tough stuff we've been through COVID, there's been some really awesome things that have come out of this that have kind of been the hammer on the head, is what I call it. Knocked a little sense back into us to go, oh, really? We've kind of got off target. We've got off target thinking, I need bigger and better activities. And we've lost this whole idea of connectedness, and that really is what our mission about, and really driving us back to camp culture, right? What is your culture? And I just talked about that at a conference. What's your culture? What does that look like to you? If I ask you, explain to me your camp culture, camp director, what is that to you? I'm going to hear over and over again about the psychosocial, mental, emotional, social components of what they're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, I find that even in my recruitment of staff for this year, these last couple of years, I've been much more intentional in speaking to staff candidates about our concern for their well-being is as important as what we do for the parents who pay for their kids to come to camp. I think that we're dealing with a generation, and we just had this wonderful show about Gen Z and them being so aware of what their needs are and so self-aware, that the reassurance that overall health is a concern of ours, physical, mental, social, and we need to demonstrate, like we've got to back up what we say, because they're watching us. You just can't say it. You got to deliver. So you have to give it some time. So I know for our organization, it's been something on the forefront. And COVID has provided us, like I know with Kelly and many camp owners, a time to look at silver linings, right? What are some things we did during COVID that just are now going to be sort of natural pieces of training and recruitment and all this stuff? And we're hearing more and more that it all relates to just overall health, and it's much more than just the place where a Band-Aid or some TLC for a sore throat can be. It's much bigger than that, and I think our health centers in general are becoming more robust in terms of the breadth of skills that the personnel have in the health centers, and I'm sure you're seeing that as well.
Well, you're exactly right, and we talk all the time about 20, 30 years ago, we said, hey, we called it an infirmary. Do you know what infirmed means? Infirmed means you're ill, very ill, and we're trying to revive you from death, basically. And then we moved from infirmary to health center, and people got very focused on the walls of the health center. Whoever works within those walls is the healthcare team. And really, the past 3 to 4 years, we really try to encourage and embrace people to talk about camp health services. Because do you know who's on your camp health team? Everyone at camp. Everyone at camp. I don't care how great a camp director someone is, they are dependent, just like me as a nurse at camp. I'm dependent on the eyes and ears of every one of those counselors to say, something's going on with little Johnny, or things have felt different in the cabin, right? We're dependent on everyone at camp to kind of be aware and be observant of well-being, right? And just noticing when something just seems off. The beauty of camp, as you mentioned, is I say, how do you define camp? You can't define camp. I don't know if you've realized that or not, but the beauty and challenge of camp is diversity. The beauty of camp is we're so diverse. All of us do so many different things, and we call it camp. The challenge of camp is we're so diverse that we can't really define ourselves. And so when people say, what's camp? Tom Rosenberg and I have this conversation. We're like, well, it's really hard to define. You can't define it by the people you serve. You can't define it by your location. You can't define it by the lunch menu. You can't define it by the feast. You can't define it by any particular parameter. So it does create some challenge. But the beauty of that is in our diversity, we've now been able to say, hey, we kind of simplified this the past couple of years, and the kids loved it. Instead of being pressured to get to 9 activities in the day, we took a couple of those off, and the girls painted fingernails and the guys played checkers. And guess what? They had time to reach our mission, which was connecting kids to one another. And they were like, we're just going to kind of keep that. It is unstructured time with a little structure, right? And I think even staff loved that opportunity just to have some downtime. We all have to have, we call it our comfy space, right? You got to have that comfy space where all of us have to go back to restore and rest. And we all need it. And we all need it every day. And so how do we do that at camp? Because we think push, 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 go, 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 get to all the activities. Is that the mission of your camp, that every kid attends every activity? If so, okay. But again, I don't hear that from camp directors. I hear our goal is to get staff and campers to engage with one another, to care about one another. Our mission that we talk about is at camp, you're safe. Everyone is safe, loved, and respected at camp. And then how do we display that here? What does that look like? And so I think that's the kind of the fun beauty of what we're learning, as you talked about these past 2 years, is people are saying, oh, well, we can just do a little tie-dyeing and hang out and eat popsicles afterwards. Yeah. And guess what? It gives them time, because it takes time to connect, right? If you're saying, oh my goodness, we've got to run because we're going to be late for archery, and archery's in 10 minutes. Don't be late. Don't be late. Are we missing the opportunity to connect with the kid on the walk, on the way? Maybe so. And that's really what the kid will remember, is the counselor who spent those few extra minutes with them when they're having a rough day, or they're figuring out how to manage their anger or their frustration or their, differences. So kind of a really cool space to be in, really.
It's so interesting to think about some of the things that have occurred authentically from the past 2 years and those changes. And I love even just the rebranding of the name of the Alliance, which camp is that alliance, really, when you think about it, for kids, right? It's an alliance of adults that really care for kids. And then I like just the health, right? Like versus camp nursing, camp health, because it does encompass all those things. But yeah, it's just so intriguing to think how that has changed. And like how we said, of camp directors and owners, the different focuses we now have and things we do at camp and staff training that we never did before related to overall health for campers and staff equally. So it's just so interesting, I think.
Oh, I think your point is so well taken. And for the years that I've been in this position, I have fought that battle of we're more than nursing. We're more than nursing. And about a third of our membership has always been camp directors, always. But I think this new umbrella term of Alliance for Camp Health will help people feel like they really are part of something that is really important to them. And under that umbrella, we have 3 communities of people: camp nurses and healthcare providers, camp leaders and directors, and camp mental health supports and behavioral health support folks. Now, those people all integrate and participate in any educational piece they want to participate in, but it helps them realize we have been serving these folks, but under that auspice of Association of Camp Nursing, it really was quite difficult for us to get past that barrier sometimes. So I love the fact that we have these communities. They're all working together and being served together under this umbrella of the Alliance, because that is our goal. That is our goal for everyone to realize we all have a responsibility in some way to one another and to promote health and wellness in one another. And if we can get that across a little bit, I think we'll make some big steps in helping our folks at camp, especially.
So speaking of the last 2 years, I'm not sure if I really want to bring it up, but here we go. We would love to talk with you about COVID in 2022 and what does that look like for camps, and what should we be thinking about, and just the current state of where we're at today.
Well, yeah, I would say that 2020, in essence, for us, was really the easiest year to provide you guidance, because we said, this is what you must do, right? And we laid out very strict kind of guidelines, and people knew exactly what they needed to do. Then in 2021, that loosened up some, and camps had a little more choice, really, about navigating their facility, their structure, what was working best for them. This year, we will really be launching into, with the CDC and ACA, we'll be launching into really more of what we call best practice, right? So Kelly's camp and Howie's camp are different. And that means what's best practice at one camp looks different than another camp. And so instead of us saying, you must wash your hands between each activity, we're going to say, what's best practice for your camp? What works best at your facility? How do you do your structure and your schedule? And then how do you integrate hand washing within that structure? So what's best practice for Kelly? Now, I will tell you, camps would rather me tell them exactly what to do.
100%. Yes, I'm sure.
Camps directors say, no, Tracy, that doesn't help me. I want you to tell me exactly what to do. And I'm like, but I don't know your facility. I mean, day camp, residential camp, what population you serve, how close you are to emergency service. I don't know your facility. So we really are moving toward more of a best practice approach instead of very kind of rigid guidelines. So things this year are going to really be around transmission rates, right? What's your transmission rate in your community? Is it high, medium, low? What does that look like? There are, of course, they're not too far outdated. Quarantine and isolation guidelines have changed. So, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine in essence if you're exposed to someone. So that's going to kind of change how you navigate the camp experience. It's also going to help camps make decisions, the camp directors make decisions about encouraging vaccination or requiring vaccination. And does that happen is that different or the same for campers and staff? There's not really, and people want me to tell them there's a right or wrong answer, and there's not really a right and wrong answer. It's what's going to be best for your camp and your facility. So, for example, as a day camp, right, you're not going to, doing screening every day is not going to be helpful because your people go home every night. So you have to think about what works better in that capacity than a residential facility, which really can kind of close the gate, shut the doors, and making a bubble or not, whether it's a hardcore bubble or not, there is a little more safety in that process once the experience is started. So there is not hard and fast rules right now. The one thing I would tell you that we have been watching a little bit is just some variance of interest. There's a difference between variance of interest and variance of concern. Right. So we have variants of interest that CDC is watching. And those variants of interest mean that the spike protein has changed a little. And when you see that little spike, it looks a little different. It's a variant to what we normally saw. But that could mean nothing. It could mean you never hear another thing about it and it washes out and goes away. We never know anything. But if it becomes a variant of concern, that means we've seen some transmissibility, maybe some concerns that this could cause some transmission issues between people. So that's really where the CDC sits. We really get this variant of interest by genomic testing. And so we look at that virus through genomic testing and identify the variants, and then basically it's a wait and see kind of game. The last we heard is that if there's going to be another variant, it's probably going to be in 3 or 4 months, and that was like February. So in 3 or 4 months, what's happening? Camp.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I mean, you're like, you just got to move forward where you are. I always tell camps, it's better to be over prepared than under prepared. I'm not saying go out and buy 500 KN95 masks, but at least have a few. So in the worst case scenario, you're prepared with some supplies and some protocols so that if you had to launch your communicable disease plan, you're ready to do so. Right. So
yeah, I know, geographically too, it influences sort of the relationship with your local public health and, what they're seeing in the community and issues of outbreak management. I know up here in Ontario and Canada, I think there's an awareness where even for our overnight camps who may be in jurisdictions where public health is a little more cautious about things, may put on some different requirements for outbreak management in a residential environment. I know a lot of conversation, Tracy, these days are, to rapid tests or not to rapid tests. Are we now in managing flu-like symptoms like other things and just being very mindful of, and so it's really, we're in this, I just feel this summer is going to be sort of this testing ground of sort of allowing the expertise you have in your setting and sort of knowing, obviously, your clientele too. As a day camp operator, we're worried and we want to be very careful about mandates we make around symptoms and being away from camp, missing days, and what is the relationship between what we feel is the right approach versus what public health is saying. And these are all good discussions, obviously, to be having now. And ultimately, and I know you'd be very mindful of this, is communicating that to your people. You need to find a time in the calendar to let people know what your approaches might be. But we're also in this weird flux of it's changing so fast.
It is. And I mean, where most people sit right now, their transmission rates are low. Things look really good. Everybody seems to be doing well. A lot of the mask requirements in different states I know are going away. And so can anybody tell us what that's going to look like on June the 1st? Not really, but we hope we're sitting in the same space we're sitting in now. That would be beautiful, right? But last summer, folks did really well, but guess when Delta came in, right? Second to third week of July. So all the COVID cases last summer that we collected basically happened between second or third week of July and the middle of August. So camps were calling, going in June, they were going, we don't have any COVID, Tracy, it's great. So I'm like, yay, wait for Delta to come in. So it is hard. Nobody can predict that. It's a matter of kind of being the best prepared you can for your population, your facility, who you serve, what access you have to other services, and just kind of, it's life. There's no full risk guarantee to anything. So we just do our best and try to be as prepared and trained, educated as we can to move forward in those areas, because we know I don't have to convince anybody on this podcast how important it is for all of those folks to be together. That summer experience is crucial for them to come together.
For sure. So one of the, as you know, I mean, what's been on camp owners' minds, putting our workforce together, getting our staffing in place. And we've talked at length about, how we're recruiting differently, how are we making the camp experience attractive? I'm wondering, from staffing sort of health services in the camp setting, what are you seeing? Are people coming to the camp setting to provide health services? What are you finding through, your organization, and what are you seeing now about the success camp owners are having, camp directors are having with staffing their health centers and their overall health services?
We know the standard is that finding your camp nurse is probably the hardest person to find for your camp. And for those of you like you, Howie, who have had great nurses for many years, you don't even know how lucky.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, you do. How fortunate you are.
I'm told that all the time.
You get reminded, of course. Yes, they're good. They're smart nurses. They have to remind you how lucky you are. But the key for most camps is still and continues to be finding a healthcare provider, because people say, I'm looking for a camp nurse. I'm like, yes, you're looking for a camp nurse who's prepared to be a camp nurse. I always laugh and say, I can operate in just about any camp setting. Walk me in there, show me a little bit of the policy. I can pretty much fly with that. But you don't want to take me into a hospital ICU and have me run a ventilator. Somebody's going to die, right? Because that is not my setting. That is not what I've been trained to. That's not what I know. And I can navigate the different camp settings pretty well because I have the feel for that community-based care approach, prevention and health and wellness experience. But that's what happens to camp nurses. They come out of an ICU as a sweet little volunteer to come to camp. And the camp director hands them a manual and says, here's the health manual, go forth and conquer. And the camp nurse goes, what in the world am I supposed to do? I don't have any clue, not even how to begin to give out the first pill, right? I don't know where's the supplies? Well, who do I communicate? So it's really the camp director, and I bet if I've said it one time, I've said it 1,000, the camp director and your healthcare provider, nurse, or whoever that is, must be connected at the hip. They must be so integrated in their communication and their collaboration and their everything they do every day to talk to each other every day at camp, to share what's going on with the camp director. They're managing the health services, right? So those nurses are healthcare providers, and they need to be communicating with that camp director. So they're in the know. So if a kid has been sick or something's been going on, the camp director is aware. And then if we need to progress that into more astute care, we are ready to do that in a very collaborative way. So yes, camp nurses are always still a struggle. Now I will say this year, it's been interesting because nurses are a lot of burnout in the acute care settings, hospitals, places, and are looking for a change. So we probably, on our website, we have a camp nurse job board, and then we have where nurses can submit their resume. So if somebody submits a job ad on our website, we send you a password to that nurse resume page. And then you can go in and look at all these nurse resumes and see if any of them meet your need as a camp. So we have 30 or 40 resumes, on our site that camp directors and those nurses can connect with one another. We're hoping, our goal obviously is to branch that out and now have social workers on there and therapists and anybody kind of in that mental, emotional, social health piece as well, so that camp directors are now being able to connect with all types of healthcare providers for their camp. So that's a really growing piece out of what we're doing at the Alliance for Camp Health, is really helping people understand, yes, a nurse is great. Your nurse is the cog in the wheel to make your camp health services operate. But having those other people that also provide that really unique and beautiful service around behavioral health is going to be really important moving forward.
Tracy, it's like you've planned the segues to our next questions that we had lined up for you. Because Howie and I, on that thought of behavioral health and other staff to support that team, what are some things that you think we should be thinking about, especially in regards to mental, emotional, and social health? So that mesh piece as camp owners and directors, what should we be thinking about, especially related to staff training? We talked a little bit about identifying, maybe bringing those professional staff onto our team. So what would you say would be some good advice for us right now?
Yes, and yes. So I will tell you, we are, of course, deep in the weeds of mesh work right now. Next Thursday, April 14th, we will be launching our mesh resource guide. And we started with two groups of camp directors, and we had them working in focus groups. They volunteered their time to work in focus groups. One group of camp directors worked on pre-camp type of work. Another group of camp directors worked on during camp, like de-escalation and how do you interact and how do you communicate. These worked on application questions and health history questions and interview type of things. What are those things we should be asking and collecting from staff as we bring them into the camp experience? So I was very fortunate to have these two groups do lots of great work, and then we sunsetted them in December. And then I thought we would come out with a 30, maybe 40-page mesh resource guide. We're a little over 90 pages right now, and it's going to become, we've cut it right now just because we said we've got to take it for the event next week. So it will be a living document. So people that come to the webinar will get a copy of that mesh guide, and it has everything in it from, hey, what should I ask staff on an application? How might I ask about mesh events in an interview? What are some things we might ask in a health history document? What are those things we can do with campers and parents? How do we prepare them for the camp experience? Because we know all of that preparatory work is hugely important in the mesh arena. Parents, campers, staff, and being able to give them bite-sized pieces before they get to you is going to save you hours of challenges once they're on your facility. Once campers and staff arrive, they're kind of there. They're with you. What you've told them and trained them thus far is all they know. And so the more you can give them in bite-sized pieces ahead of time, whether it's vlogs or blogs or Zoom events or whatever way you want to connecting with your staff frequently, having mentor kind of things where you have a returning staff do a Zoom session with new staff, anything to kind of start building that community, because that's where we're headed back to, right? We've all mentioned that we're headed back to this connectedness, to this community development piece, to growing that opportunity to socially engage and learn how to use our language skills, right? And so that's a whole other piece of teaching people how to use their language skills. And along with this big, robust mesh guide, we have a little bitty pocket counselor guide that says things you should say, right? On one piece, things you should not say on the next page. I mean, very simple, to the point that we teach people a lot of things. Our brains retain about 20% of that. The other 80% you told them that you thought was very helpful is forgotten. So now if you have just a little piece of pocket guide, they can pull out and go, thank you for telling me that, right? They can say the right thing at that moment. Or you teach your staff 3 basic things to say all the time. There are statements you can say in just about every situation. So if Howie comes and he's angry, or Kelly comes and she's mad and they're campers, I can say, thank you for sharing that with me. Don't have to fix it. Don't have to try to rectify it. Kids just want to be heard, just like adults. And your staff just want to be heard. So we have to teach not only staff, but your leadership, your camp directors, as Howie mentioned at the very beginning, have got to model this behavior. And the only way we model it is by practicing it, right? It's just so many things. But yeah, the mesh is huge. And this document we've created is living. It's going to be revised every year. We're going to do this mesh webinar every spring so that people can come, get the new guidance, the new update, and launch out with that to hopefully support their efforts in all of their work across the spectrum of camp.
Yeah, that's very exciting, and I don't doubt for a moment that it'll be really well received. And I know that this period of time we've all been experiencing together has highlighted how we can be anxiety reducers in a very intentional way, both on the camper side, the parent side, and the staff side. And often we know whether you're a parent is sending their child off to day camp or overnight camp, much of what kids are revealing about their own anxiety are often because of projections from their parents. So if we can get to parents first, or coach them or provide them with the answers to the questions that are in their head but they don't know, like the more we can do that, that'll have a huge we know that it'll have a huge trickle down effect to the way our campers present themselves on the first day or in the first few nights of camp, because we know our parents worry for their kids in a very significant way, and some of the worries that our kids have are a result of what they see their parents going through. So I do think that one of the things Kelly and I have been very intrigued about, and again, I couldn't go without giving a plug to Dr. G here, is how, if we can get to staff parents too, because camp work is hard, and whether it be a call from overnight camp back home to say how the week went, or your young adolescent staff member gets off the bus at day camp, they may have had a hard day, and what parents can do to calm them down or coach them to get right back into the arena and do their thing. I think it sounds like this is all part of what we're working towards. And I know for Kelly and myself, it's become such a focus in our staff training, vision around trying to, reduce those levels of anxiety, because they're so self-aware, our staff and our campers, more than ever that I can remember.
Yeah, we learned that staff this past year could easily tell you that they were anxious or upset or depressed, but the challenge was that they didn't, when the camp director said, so how do we want to handle that? They didn't have a response, right? They didn't know how to self-regulate in that way of saying, I'm anxious. Now, okay. Now, how would you manage this at home, right? So again, we're starting way back with parents to say, how do you manage that at home? What does that look like? And the thing we found out from our research is that most of the things people do at home to manage their mental, emotional state can easily be done at camp. Some say, I sit around and take deep breaths. Other people say, I go for a walk. Other people say, I ride my bike. Other people say, I eat chocolate ice cream. It fixes all my anxiety. Okay, guess what? We can do all that at camp. There's very few things that people do to manage their mesh status that you can't do at camp. But the key is you have to know that ahead of time, right? You have to know ahead of time. So how we can go out and buy extra chocolate ice cream, because that's what they do to manage their anxiety. That's okay. That's totally cool. Howie would be great with that if he knows ahead of time to have double the amount of chocolate ice cream he normally would. So that's kind of the key to some of that. And Dr. G's right. She talks about mesh all the time. We talk about mesh. We know that parents, their job is to advocate for their child. Their number one job is to advocate for their child. Now, do parents do that well all the time? And do they do it using the right language? No, none of us do everything perfectly. But if we can get in the mind of our staff and us as well, that the parent who's acting out in whatever way that might be is really trying to advocate for their child, and this is the only way they know how, right? And that's why we say, bring the kid and leave the parent at home, because parents are often more difficult than the camper. But if we can help them understand that, and then the second part of that is helping them understand that our only job is to set their child up for success. Our job is to set your child up for success. So how do we collaborate together to make that happen, right? And then when parents hear, oh, Kelly's on my side, she's interested in setting my child up for success, this is not antagonistic, this is collaborative, right? And sometimes that means Kelly may say, you know what, sounds like your child needs to have a camp experience, but maybe I'm not the right camp. Maybe Howie's camp is the right camp. And we in the camp world are very good at that. We're very good at sharing that, knowing what each other has and knowing what kind of skill sets and opportunities we have at different camps. And we're more than willing to set the child up for success by trying to collaborate with the parent. But you got to get that parent to understand you really are on their side. You're not against them. You're actually right there with them, trying to make things great for their kiddo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two things really stick out about what you just said, and that mesh guide that you're talking about is how you're giving ideas for camp directors about things to ask on the application, or like an interview. I was at a education recently where they said, asking staff or potential staff in an interview, what are your go-to coping strategies? And then if they are things that maybe can happen because of your camp culture, how it's set up, calling my mom. Well, okay, if your mom's not available or you don't have your phone on you, what are some other ones? So talking through some of those strategies when you're interviewing them. So that really stuck out to me with a trend that I'm hearing. And then the other part was in your guide about things that staff can say or not say. We were just talking about training with my team, and one of my staff said that was one of the most helpful parts of training was practice with what to say in situations, whether it's behavior or different things, but giving them the words to use is so powerful. So I really like that that's a part of your guide.
Staff it's a huge part. It's probably a significant part of our guide. It's just all around language and how to use language in very helpful ways. But yeah, staff, especially your young staff, need you to physically hand them the language to use. And then once they use it a few times, it for any of us, right, it becomes kind of more second nature. But the first time I say, thank you for telling me that, it sounds a little flat to me. And then I'm like, no, thank you for sharing that. The more I say it and the more I do it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, that really is kind of meaningful. And I'm not trying to fix the problem, because our job is not to fix the problem. And I tell staff that all the time as well. We're not here to fix the problem. You probably can't fix whatever they're bringing with them, whatever stressors they're bringing, but you can listen and you can be present. And that's really what we want you to do in this time that you have at camp, is listen and be present with your campers. And when you tell them, thank you for sharing that, they know you heard them. They know you heard what you said. And so that is just, it's powerful. Words are so powerful. And if we don't want to lose that impetus and the value of that at camp, because it really can change a kid's life.
As we continue this journey towards day one of the summer, whether it's early June or early July, wherever you might be, you know, when you think of the conversations you're having with camp directors and, you know, people in camp settings who are responsible for health services, can we just talk a little bit about some key recommendations for 2022, resources or things that you'd like everyone to start really digging into as they plan for the summer?
Yeah, you're going to be probably shocked by what I've been recommending. So I've been traveling every week in March, talking at all the different conferences. And the pretty consistent theme when I'm talking to camp directors and staff is simplification. Just simplifying things and realizing that if you're coming back and revisiting your mission. So I say to camp directors, what's your mission statement? Can you recite it for me? Do you know what your mission is? And then are you truly living out your mission, right? Because it's very easy for us to get in the weeds and get sidetracked by the newest, greatest game, the newest, greatest activity. And that's not wrong. But if it's not mission driven, if that's not what your mission is, then keep bringing you and your staff back to your mission. So if my mission is to connect kids to one another, is my program set up that I allow the opportunities and experiences to do that? And most of the time, it's a very simple activity. In 2020, I'm probably the only person who knows how to play jacks, right? Where you throw the jacks in the air and you pick them up with the ball. People have never heard of that, right? They taught kids how to play jacks, and they thought it was the coolest game ever. I was like, never thought about it. They played cards, they painted fingernails, things that they felt they could clean up easily in 2020. And camp directors said, kids loved it. We kept them in cohorts, right? And kids went home and told their parents, it's one of the best summers I've ever had. You know why? Because I didn't get to hang out with my BFF. They were in another cohort because they're a year older. And I had to meet new friends. Because of the barriers that we created for health, believe it or not, we created this barrier that promoted new friendships and new connectedness. And kids went home and said, I met a brand new best friend this year, and we got to be together the whole week, right? And so there's things that came out of this, and that really was the goal of camp, to meet the new friend. Like, it's a score. It's a score when they did those things, right? And you can't overlook the simplicity of that, because that's really what our ultimate goal is for kids to begin to love and embrace the connectedness with one another. Because most of us who've been to camp most of our life have friends from camp as youth, especially in the special needs population. I have people that I've taken care of whether at camp when they're 6, and they're still friends with their people when they're 30. And there's kids throughout life that walk through that as well and can learn to navigate and develop a whole support system just by their involvement with camp. So I say camp is such a simple 4-letter word, but it has such power and impact. So I just keep telling people, stay mission focused. Think about what that is. If your staff can't recite your mission, that's the first thing you need to teach them. Do your first podcast on your mission and ask them what that means to them. When I tell you this statement, and this is our mission statement, what does that mean? How are we going to live that out at camp? And a couple of camp directors have said, it kind of rocked our world, Tracy, because we had to redo our whole programming schedule that we've kind of been building up over the past 10 years. I'm like, good. That's what COVID's done for us. It's made us stop and rethink and reevaluate. And there are moments, we don't want people having COVID again if we can prevent it, but there are moments and events like this that really are in many ways good for us and drive us to think differently and better and more inclusive and more holistic about everything we're doing in the camp world.
I like it. I like it. Slow down.
Slow down. And enjoy one another. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Tracy, it just sounds, as much as what's so amazing about, I think, the work you've done, and I think Kelly and I are so grateful for, is that just normalizing sort of where health fits into it's just like any part of your fulfilling your mission. It's just this one part, and health touches everything. But if we can really be mindful of all these touch points where we can create a healthy environment, and, I think that ultimately, will allow us to reflect so positively on what we've done. Because I think that we isolate the topic of health services in such a potentially a scary way. It's of this mountain we have to climb, where I think, for people listening, I hope they take away that as a breath of fresh air, like, if everyone's on board moving in the same direction, we can take care of the daily bumps and bruises and the challenges of how people are feeling emotionally, and just make it just a regular part of what we deliver. That's my takeaway from this, Kelly, more than anything. Tracy, she didn't even talk about the nurse in her recommendations. She just talked about it's just part of camp. And I'm feeling that more and more now, particularly over the last few years, because it's we've been so focused on delivering a healthy camp, but we have to broaden the definition of a healthy camp is so important.
Your staff have to be our crucial links in that healthy camp mission. Yeah, and they've got to understand what the mission is, what part they can play in bringing that to fruition and making those things happen, because all of us want to be needed, and you just giving them voice to some of that, camp directors giving their staff voice to some of that, can be so powerful in such simple ways, right? If they think you understand about their anxiety or whatever their situation might be, it's going to be life-changing, because they're coming in with a support system in place. They're not meeting Howie for the first time on, first day of orientation. That's a really rough way to start, especially if you already have anxiety, especially if you already have self-doubt, especially if you already have so many other things happening at the same time. So yeah, the physical things are important, but we can handle those. It's everything else we're doing at camp that is part of that health and well-being spectrum, right? The whole alliance of what we're doing. We need our camp staff to be fully on board, to be fully engaged in what we're doing, to be excited about what we're doing. Because last summer, usually staff are hands in the air, cheering and excited about whatever you're doing. And last summer, staff were kind of a thumbs up with a half smile, like, I'm with you, but I'm not fully feeling the whole camp vibe. And that's a hard way to start, So yeah, so there's just so many parts of working with staff and everybody else. We're in the fall, we are launching a robust managing health services course for camp directors. Because that's what camp directors do. They manage their health services. In most cases across the country, there's a camp director involved in that. And they just don't always understand their role in that, right? They're like, well, I'm not in the health center. No, you're not. Maybe in the building. But what is health services, right? Really, what does that look like? So why not do walking rounds of your camp with your camp nurse? And if you see health concerns, you can talk about it while you're grading the cabins on the Clean Cabin Award or whatever, right? So just fun ways to kind of pull all those pieces together in a very healthy way.
That sounds like good timing. That's one of my favorite phrases right now is in the fall. When we have something like, oh, we'll do that in the fall. Oh, I can wait till the fall. I'm like, I need a t-shirt that I wear all through April and May, like in the fall. It's like a statement. So I like that, Tracy. That sounds great for the fall.
The fall.
Yeah, I'm really curious, Howie, just to see what this summer looks like. So it'll be really just interesting to see what the COVID ripple through this summer, just what we're still learning. So I'm really curious to talk to you in the fall, Tracy, and what the trends were and what we saw. So before we move on to our final segment, our inspiration, we do need to take care of a little business to thank our second sponsor, which is Camp Brain. Camp Brain has been in the camp industry since 1994 with 45 plus dedicated staff to meet your every need. This is the time of year where as camp directors, you've gone through registration, but it is really when your registration software does a lot of work for you. I need to pull out this report, even lots of mesh information of campers and staff from their health forms. So this is a time of year where you really are relying on your registration software. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I love Camp Brain so much. And they sponsor this podcast. Amazing. Or you might also be thinking, this doesn't work for me. So if you are thinking your software doesn't work for you, you can call Camp Brain and get some more information about switching over in the fall or just learning more. So you can go to campbrain.com or 866-485-8885.
That was amazing, Kelly.
That was amazing.
I love that. That was great. Yes, thank you to Camptivities and Camp Brain for their ongoing support of the show. We are now at the point in each episode where we talk a little bit about what's inspiring us this day and over these weeks early spring, and we want to get an idea from Kelly and Tracy what's inspiring them. It could be a book, an article, a podcast, a documentary, a quote, something that helps you become a better camp professional. And I guess we're in the business of modeling. So I'll go first and I'll just get mine out there, and we'll go to Kelly and we'll let, Tracy go, have anchor in all of this, this inspiration. For me, as many of us are, we're in the midst of training and the early parts of managing our supervisors, which is a real focus for my team these days. And I'm reminded of a resource that I always remind my young supervisors at camp, those sophomores and juniors in college or university who are now supervising their friends for the first time or having to take on more responsibility, or maybe just brand new to camp. And what does it mean to be a supervisor at camp? Like, what does that look like and sound like and feel like? A book that I've leaned on over the years is a book by Bruce Tulgan. It's Okay to Be the Boss. And I take a lot of pride and intentionality in defining what does it mean to be a boss at camp, and how you can be successful at it. And it's okay to be the boss, and what does that mean for managing young people today? So it's called It's Okay to Be the Boss by Bruce Tulgan. If you've never seen it, heard about it, I check it out. It's a good refresher for me at this time of year. Kelly, what's inspiring you?
What's not inspiring me right now? I don't know. I just had last weekend the Winnetka Leadership Conference. It's for our Northland and Wisconsin and Dakota's ACA locally. But it was the first time we got to do it in person, which was lovely. But we had the keynote was Sarah Kurtz McKinnon from the Summer Camp Society. So if you're not using the Summer Camp Society as a resource, I just would highly recommend them. They're not a sponsor, but they are phenomenal with their DEI, DEIJ, their Jedi work. But Sarah had talked about feedback, which is something as camp owners, directors, any of us in the camp industry that is really important. And she was talking a lot about encouraging feedback in your staff, but then also taking care of your own mesh a little bit and how you receive feedback, and knowing maybe having your leadership team read the feedback first or read it to you, or just, and also knowing you can't implement it all. So it just was really nice reminders for me about encouraging feedback, how to promote that with my staff, even during training, but then how to work through that during the summer. So I really was inspired about that and some different things that I'm going to implement in camp this summer. So that was lovely.
So Kelly, mine is somewhat close to yours, because I say the people that are hardest on yourself are you, right? We're hardest on our own selves most of the time. And one of the quotes that I've carried with me for years for that exact reason is, we get up and we push and we work and we shove and we try to make things happen and try to put the square peg in the round hole when really we know we may not work. And some days it's just difficult, right? And some days it's nice if every day's easy, but we wouldn't grow and change and be better people if it was all easy. And so there's a quote on my wall at my house, and it's by Marianne Rademacher, and it says, Courage is sometimes the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Because some days you're just like, I cannot do anymore. And you feel like you want to put your hands up and be done. And that's okay. Don't be so hard on yourself that you can't say, today was tough. Today was difficult. And you know what? Tomorrow is courageous, right? Tomorrow is saying, I'm going to try again tomorrow. And that's how we kind of grow perseverance and growth and endurance. And that's when people become more personally courageous, is when they keep trying to the final point of what success is for them, and they can define what their success is. And that's kind of the fun of staff, because staff are learning more than your campers are most of the time. Campers are coming for the fun. The staff are learning and growing and being educated, and that's hard work many days. So I always just say, I've got courage. Got courage just to try again tomorrow. It's just a quiet voice saying, it's okay, Tracy. Don't be so hard on yourself. Tomorrow you can get up and try again. And that's always in my head.
I love that. That could be a camp, anyone in the camp profession, a mantra every night before you go to bed. I love that. That's great. All right. So if our listeners would love to get a hold of you, Tracy, how would you suggest they contact you?
Isn't that a great question? Since all of our emails are changing today and all of our all of our websites changing today, we are today. The Alliance for Camp Health is our website, allianceforcamphealth.org. My email currently is my last name, Gaslin, Gaslin @campnurse.org, which will eventually become Gaslin at allianceforcamphealth.org. So we're in transition, so just be patient with us in the next 24, 48 hours. I just expect some glitches. I'm not going to be too hard on myself. We're just going to get through that technology piece as quickly as we can, but it's exciting. And go to the new website, see all the things that are there. There's camp director chats there. We're really serving every part of that population that we have under that umbrella of the Alliance. And we want people to know that if we want to meet your needs, and hearing from you guys and camp directors and knowing what your needs are, The Managing Camp Health Services course this fall is coming out because camp directors requested it. A camp director chat is happening because a camp director requested it. And so we don't know what needs are sometimes until people reach out to us and share their experience. So we love to hear from you guys. It's really our joy and pleasure. And we really do answer the phone. The phone goes with me everywhere I am. It's always with me. I never leave it. So people tend to, when I answer the phone right now and say Association for Camp Nursing, they pause and I'm like, hello? They're like, it's a person. And it answered the phone. I'm like, yes, we still answer our phone.
Amazing.
Way to be old school. I love it. And I did put the website in the show notes. So your new website.
Thank you.
So I have
Great.
that
Thanks
in
so
there.
much.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
Howie, how can individuals get a hold of you?
So on Instagram and Twitter at Howie Grossinger. And if you want to reach me by email, howie@camprobinhood.ca.
All right. And my email is kelly@hiddenpinesranch.com. If you have any questions about any of the things that we talked about, any show notes, any of these resources, you can find them all at gocamp.pro/ownerspod. It was great to have you, Tracy. Thank you
Thanks,
so much
guys.
for spending the time with us and educating us. It's always so insightful. And we're really excited about your rebranding and new, your new resources and just like having this idea about alliance and health. So we love it. We love it. Howie.
Thank you. Yeah.
Always a pleasure, partner.
Great seeing you, Kelly. Great chatting, Tracy.
All right.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Take
Thanks
care.
so much,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah. Have a great day.